asking, why is it difficult for the discos to make the kind of investments that are needed to ensure that people are able to get electricity? I'll give you an instance. The minister made reference to load shedding, that in a situation where electricity generated is not enough, or is it load rejection, beg your pardon, electric distribution companies are rejecting electricity sent to them. What sort of situation gives rise to that?
Well, I think it's capital inadequacy. One of the things that...
Put in simple words, sorry. Capital inadequacy means what?
They do not have the money. And this money cannot just be loan. It can be borrowing. The people who invested need time, need to put in money. And if they do not have that, maybe they need to raise money by asking other people to join them. That's the simple thing, right? Because there's a lot of debt, a lot of borrowing in the sector. And you can't continue to borrow. You have to raise equity. And if you cannot raise it as incumbents in the business, maybe you have to ask other people. The acquisition finance, where people borrow to buy the, purchase the assets, was not quite, is not optimal. But you would have expected that even if you borrow to get in there, then once you come in, you should begin to look for equity to support that. We've not seen that. There has been very little capital crossing from outside into the electricity sector. It's been trying to use what is being collected, even though it's less, and trying to buy things like transformers.
Is it that people don't see that it is viable? They don't see the electricity sector as a viable option?
Oh, they do see the electricity sector as viable, but maybe they're hoping that some other person will invest while they continue to hold the ownership of the company.
Okay, just quickly then. There was also this, hullabaloo about, serving customers who are already underneath a certain disco or underneath a grid. I think one of our guests yesterday gave an instance where the Lagos State government had invested in NIPPs and was hoping to, was it NIPPs now? Oh no, an IPP, just an independent power project, and they were hoping to serve a customer base with idle electricity that they had around, and they couldn't because the discos felt that, you're going to be taking our customers, or these customers belong to us. Can you wade in a bit, into that sort of scenario? What do you think should be the ideal thing? Should we be able to look at electricity just wasting away when people are in darkness?
Well, I think the minister also alluded to that. So one of the things contemplated by the Reform Act is that somewhere along the line, the government could declare what you call eligible customers, which are individuals, companies large enough to purchase electricity from either a trader or directly from a generation company, right? And they will flow the power through the transmission or distribution network. When they do, the distribution companies must allow that to happen. The only thing is that they will charge what you call distribution use of service agreement. So it's a willing charge. So I don't know what this is all about, but maybe at that time, those customers and eligible customers had not actually come into play. But I don't know why that would happen. I don't know the full details of why the distribution company could say no to that. So
there is a clause right now that should be able to sort that dispute if any should arise, equitably. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, once the minister declares what you have, the eligible customers, then those people can go out and buy power from anybody without, and just flow it. Distribution companies will be obligated to open their network for that power to move from a generation company or a trading company to the consumer.
What about those seeking to use alternative sources of power? Do they have any obligations to anyone whatsoever? For instance, those investing quite a bit in solar generation.
It depends on the architecture of the supply. If you're in an estate and you want to put together a solar farm to supply the estate, I don't see why you should have a problem with that. If it were connected to the grid, then the issue of whether you go and get a distribution license. So are you going to distribute it? Are you just going to treat it like a standby generator in an estate? So if you're distributing and metering, that's a distribution business, and then maybe you might require an off-grid license. what you call independent electricity distribution network. So yes, there could be solutions like that. But if they're connected to the grid, maybe you have to ask whether the DISCO already has a right and is licensed to supply them. Okay,
but Nigerians are still wondering, it's how many years now we still do not have constant power supply. And they've had this, conversation about, GENCOs, transmission company, and DISCOs. But if you were to look at it, break it down for the average Nigerian to say, for you to have electricity, what do you think must be done?
Well, I'm a energy market expert, so I can tell you within the laws that we have, within the regulations, a few things that can be done, and it can come. I heard Professor Yemi talk about setting up, letting states set up their own grid, their own commission agencies because of the legal part of that is okay. But there are a few things that can be done. Take, for instance, metering. In the case of metering, what NEC does is that it provides for metering costs in the tariff and then says to distribution companies, we've provided this, go raise the money and meter people. But you can take that metering cost out and say, everybody, you buy your meter, and then from a licensed supplier, have a licensed installer install your meter. That is one, right? Don't leave it with the distribution companies to do alone. Just like everybody has his own, cell phone, just go get your meter, and that can become your consumer DNA. When you move, you can move with your meter, and it's registered with the distribution company. So that is one. The second thing is that the way the tariff is spread out. So if you come to Abuja Distribution Company, is Abuja, is Nasarawa, is Kogi, is Niger State. Look, the tariff cannot be the same for everybody. The level of supply cannot be the same. People want different things. So why don't you start looking at different tariff jurisdiction? And if you come to Maitama, around this Maitama area, you can promise them 18 hours of power, and then get a different type of solution for them, right? They can pay more. So they might be okay to bring one big barge with that burns diesel, and it takes care of everybody. They pay 17 naira. That is fine with them. And then you can file that as a tariff, and you have a tariff jurisdiction, and you pass all that off. You go to some other place like Suleja, they might not care for power during the day. They want power just 6 p.m., just like you have data service, with your MTN. People have different data services. So the same way, you can't have one tariff for the whole community, for the whole distribution company. They require different level of service, and then gradually you build it out. Take, for instance, there are some states that are investing in generation. They want to help their citizens. They want to help businesses there. So allow them, if they want to pump 50 megawatts into Akwa Ibom, for instance, Akwa Ibom has a power plant, they can pump it into Akwa Ibom and then say, look, the transfer price of this, usually through the bulk trader, is 25 naira. We want to give it to Port Harcourt Distribution Company at 10 naira so that our people will pay less. Anybody within Akwa Ibom State, then they go and file a tariff special for Akwa Ibom State, and then that becomes a tariff jurisdiction. So that way you begin to help everybody. The market it's rather broad. So
you want the distribution, you see that the distribution companies have a big role to play, and they need to be more creative.
Exactly.
In terms of a tariff structure. Is that what you're saying?
In terms of tariff structure, in terms of the way the market is organized, and then you have to open it up so that people can participate. So the jurisdiction could also come with franchising. You've heard people say franchise. Why don't you give out an area to someone to run? As the person is running it, you've got to have a tariff jurisdiction. And then there are a few other things about the tariff structure that it's concerning. So if you look at the recovery plan that the ministry, the government is putting out, and historically, you have what you call the R2 consumers. They're supposed to be residential, but in classification, you could find out that people on Bodilon or people on Aso Drive, people in Maitama are classified as R2, which means that they have to be cross-subsidized. In some distribution companies, you have these just about 70%. That is wrong, right? So it means that 30% of the consumers will subsidize 70. We've said to NERC, you have to tell distribution companies that cross-subsidy cannot be more than 10% of your load. So any other person that has to be subsidized cannot be more than 10%, because when government says that it wants to provide relief to R2 customers, it finds out that it's providing relief to about 70% of the consumption. That becomes another issue on when you want to subsidize or when you want to put an intervention in place. So tariff structure and the way the market is organized can go a long way. I think NEC has a big role to play, and it can do that and help people move along.
Well, I'm afraid that we've totally run out of time. I'm sincerely hoping that members of the NERC are listening to you, and also the distribution companies as well, whom you say have a great role to play. We've been speaking with Mr. Rumundaka Wonodi, who is the former managing director of Nigerian Bulk Electricity Trading PLC, and also founder and CEO of ZKJ Energy Partners Limited, which is an energy advisory and investment firm.